Hi there, students! I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, because that's what I am. I'm a puppy-sensei, and I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. On today's grammar drop, I'm going to be introducing a relatively simple but very handy sentence fragment that indicates that you want to do something together. You want to do a verb, and you want to do that verb together with someone else. Yeah? And that sentence fragment is Issho Ni. Ne? Pronunciation with this one can be just a little bit tricky to nail down, just because of the way that geminates, that's that small tsu that causes you to pause on the next consonant sound, and vowels, which we know exhibit hiatus, both work in Japanese. Because of those features, Issho Ni is something that's a little bit difficult to say. Yeah? So, the correct pronunciation should be Issho Ni, and not Issho Ni. Please make sure that you're putting an adequate pause between the single E sound and the sh sound, like Issho Ni, ne? But also make sure that you're not elongating that final vowel sound. So it definitely should not be Issho Ni, ne? It should be Issho Ni, Issho Ni, ne? Why am I harping on the pronunciation of Issho Ni and trying very hard to make sure that you do not pronounce Issho Ni as Issho Ni? Well, that has nothing at all to do with the fact that this was a very common mistake that I would make when I was first learning Japanese. Nope, nothing at all like that. Totally unrelated. I'm just bringing this up, totally circumstantially. Just, it's a complete coincidence. I just wanted to make sure that you understood. Yeah, makes sense? Uh-huh. Anyway, let's think about the meaning behind these kanji for just a moment, okay? So, this is ichi, ne? Ichi. This first kanji that we see is ichi. Ichi is the kanji meaning one, the number one. And it is the easiest kanji in existence. It's just a line. It's very easy. Here, it's being pronounced I with a small tsu rather than ichi. But actually, that's something that we see really frequently when ichi is paired with another kanji, so that doesn't surprise us. The next kanji here is pronounced sho. But in other kanji compounds, you may sometimes hear it pronounced o, so it can be sho or o. That sho part can mean something like the beginning or a start to something in some cases, but in other cases, it'll mean something like a string or a thread. And it's my opinion that in the case of Issho Ni, that's actually what we're seeing. Ni here is serving as a particle meaning as in this case. So that means that we've got a phrase that means something like as one thread, bound together. From that point of view, maybe it's easier to understand why Issho Ni ends up meaning doing something together. That's actually kind of nice when you think about it. It's sort of like the idea of the red string in Japanese folklore. If you don't know, the red string is kind of like a thing that connects you to your soulmate, and it runs throughout all your life and connects the two of you together. This kind of like mythical red string. So I think that's kind of cute. Issho Ni, ne? Alright, so how do we use Issho Ni? Ne? Have you heard me talk about how Japanese word order is a little bit more flexible and that I find that really, really cool? As long as you've got the verb at the end of your sentence, you can be a little bit loose with the positioning of words in a Japanese sentence due to the fact that particles are there to help inform the meaning of individual sentence fragments. Yeah? And that's great. Issho Ni actually stands as its own small segment, and so from a certain point of view, you can almost treat it as its own movable part of a sentence. Let me show you what I mean, okay? Here's an example. This is a pretty easy sentence to understand, okay? I think it's easy. I think it should be easy for you to understand. This sentence is, 朝ごはんにトーストを一緒に食べます。ね? 朝ごはん means breakfast. The ni after asagohan is sort of serving the same purpose as the word for in English. So, asogohan ni kind of means for breakfast. Tosto obviously means toast, yeah? And it's got the particle o to indicate that it's the object of the sentence. It is the thing being eaten. Issho ni, we've already defined as together with, right? And tabemasu is the verb in the present polite form. So, lacking any other context, we might translate the sentence as we eat toast for breakfast together. Sometimes or right now, either way. Or we are eating breakfast together. Maybe right now. Yeah? Or, since there's really no pronoun or actor specified, you really, in this sentence, could be talking about two or more other people. It doesn't necessarily have to be you that's doing something together with. It could be two or more other people doing something together. So maybe you want to translate this sentence as they eat toast for breakfast together. Japanese can be flexible in that way, as we already know, and really it's context that lets us know whether you're talking about you doing a thing or somebody else doing a thing or something like that. Now, let's change things around for just a second. I'm going to move the Issho Ni ne, to the front of the sentence. And now our sentence is Issho ni asagohan ni toasto o tabemasu. And how does that change the meaning of the sentence? Well, it really doesn't. Like, it doesn't at all. Our sentence is still we or they eat toast for breakfast together. There's really not even any difference in nuance between the two sentences. They really are the same sentence. But that's not even all of it, because this is also a pretty much identical sentence. Asogohan ni issho ni toasto o tabemasu. Yes, that also pretty much means the exact same thing. This is what I mean about Japanese having flexible word order. A segment like Issho ni can more or less go anywhere in the sentence as long as it's not going after the verb. Now, what I've shown you so far is a use case for Issho ni, where the actor, the subject or the doer of the verb, has been dropped. Japanese is good with that, because ideally you can understand who is doing the eating based on the context of the conversation. Without any subject specified, it's almost definitely either we do a thing together or they do a thing together, and that makes pretty good sense. But what if you need to specify a particular person that you want to do something with? What if you really specifically wanted to say that you eat breakfast with manager-sama? Well, luckily, that's actually pretty easy to say in Japanese. Huh. Is that why the door is always locked when I get to the office in the morning? Anyway, if you want to specify that your Issho ni refers to a particular individual, all you need to do is mark that individual with the particle to immediately prior to Issho ni in your sentence. So, in the following example, we would have manager-sama to issho ni asagohan o tabemasu. Note, I threw out the toast in this sentence. I've marked asagohan with o instead, since that's what you're doing. You're eating breakfast together with manager-sama. The toast is irrelevant in this situation. You can be eating anything. You're still eating breakfast, and so I marked breakfast with o. Ne? And what's more, you can put anyone in the spot immediately before that to mark the individual that you're doing the verb with. Contextually, in this sentence, the most likely doer here is probably you, but it doesn't have to be, right? So you could just as easily have a sentence where you specify both the doer of the verb, who is doing the eating, and the individual or individuals that they would like to do something with, right? The Issho ni, which we know is going to be marked with to, ne? And that's how we get an example like this one. 他の教師はマネージャー様と一緒に asagohan o tabemasu. The doer of the verb, the other teachers, is marked with wa. The together with individual is marked with to. That's manager-sama. And then we would have Issho Ni and finish our sentence out like normal. Okay. I want to spring back for just a second to what I was saying about me being able to kind of move around that Issho Ni segment in a sentence. Okay? Let me show you two quick examples where I've moved that segment around in a different way. Okay? So, our two example sentences here are 他の教師はマネージャー様と朝ごはんを一緒に食べます。ね。And 他の教師は朝ごはんをマネージャー様と一緒に食べます。ね。Okay. Now, in my humble opinion, that first sentence, while not ungrammatical, is just a little bit clunky and a little bit hard to follow. Let me explain why. It strikes me as a little bit clumsy, this sentence, because the person or the individual that's been marked with to, the person that you're doing something with in the case of Issho Ni, is pretty far removed from the actual Issho Ni segment itself. If we look at the sentence, we've got manager-sama to, and then we've got asagohan o, and then we've got the Issho Ni. Ne? And so we have something in the middle between manager-sama to and Issho Ni. Now, in this sentence, maybe that's not really bad, but we could easily have sentences in Japanese where we have lots and lots and lots and lots more segments that are kind of before or after asagohan o. In which case, what's eventually going to happen is you're going to get a case where manager-sama to and Issho Ni are very, very far spread apart within the sentence. And so as we listen to this sentence, it becomes really difficult to understand who are you doing with this with, because I've kind of lost the plot, right? And for that reason, generally speaking, it's kind of better to have the individual marked with to immediately prior to Issho Ni, right? That's why the second sentence is fine. It's a good sentence. There's nothing wrong with it. It makes perfect sense. And basically, you're just saying the other teachers are eating breakfast together with manager-sama, right? It makes sense. If you separate manager-sama to and Issho Ni way, way, way too much, the sentence just becomes a little bit more complex and a little bit harder to follow. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's why that first sentence is kind of like, okay, but just not perfect. Whereas the second sentence, perfectly fine, no problem whatsoever. So basically that's it. Issho Ni is a pretty easy little segment to use, right? We can stick it in almost anywhere in the sentence, and we can use it just like I've shown today. Next week, I'm actually going to be adding to this Issho Ni concept by teaching you a verb form for making let's do suggestions. And that's something that you'll frequently be using with the Issho Ni construction. So, I'll see you then, and we'll talk about it some more, okay? Mata laishu!